Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.
Anybody else have anything for open discussion? Councilor Staggers.
Yes. In recent months, I'm getting more and more phone calls from people who are concerned about their neighbors calling the city and complaining about code violations. And oftentimes these code violations are not really that significant, but it can be very irritating. The most recent one was a phone call from somebody who lives on East 35th Street. They have a brand new 2014 motorhome. They had it parked in their driveway a few days beyond what the code allowed. And they got called in. And they're very, very irritated about that. Because here's their own motorhome on their own driveway, and a neighbor is calling the city to harass them. And like I said, I've been getting more and more of these kind of phone calls. I guess right now the question I'm asking is, can we start doing something about this to try to cut down on the harassment?
Great open question, Councilor. I believe that is one of the items on our citizen survey regarding a lot of these ordinances are enforced through complaint. And I don't know if that's probably the best way for government to work. Councilor Jamison?
Well, as some of you may painfully remember, I was the one who had proposed changing the previous ordinance to allow for RVs to be in a front of a home or in front of their home for 24 hours, because the previous ordinance was 0 hours and 0 time. You couldn't even stop to unload or get in, and we made a compromise. And so the idea that maybe you're getting more complaints. Maybe it needs to be revisited, but I haven't received those, but like before I used to, and now maybe you're getting the ones I got. And the council made a change, a revision to try to, make that change more acceptable for everybody in the community. But if you're thinking of maybe going to 48 hours or 72 or something, I think if you brought it forward, we could sure have a discussion about it.
Well, this is just one example dealing with a motorhome. I mean, there are other issues too where people are calling in.
Okay, well,
so this is a broader issue than just motorhomes. I mean, this is one important part, but
right.
Yeah.
Like if I could, Councilor Karsky was referring to and I think Jim is going to bring these forward later in our proposal or in our agenda to talk about our survey questions, but we are trying to drill down a little bit to try to figure out, is having complaint-driven code enforcement by citizens the best way to do it? Or should, just for instance, it's not in this question, but should we have staff traveling throughout the city looking for violations so that they're the bad guys instead of the neighbor? And because we've all dealt with it where we've had neighbors complaining about neighbors and it turns into a hostile situation and it ruins neighbors. But that's part of our attempt in the survey question, is to try to help get to a better answer.
I think the more broader question is do we have too many codes that people are just being harassed with? And so I think that's what we should be taking a broader look at is the regulations that we have here in Sioux Falls. That's the more important thing.
And if you have suggestions for removing certain parts of codes, Councilor, you can sure bring that forward to the council as a whole. But Councilor Erpenbach, some input?
I guess I would just remind us of a couple of things. One, when Councilor Jamison brought that forward, the citizen input on that baby was strongly in favor of move the RVs out of the driveways. We went with what citizens asked us to do when we talked about, we broadened that time limit just a little bit, but we heard tons and tons of input on that, not only here in this room, but on the streets and in the grocery stores and all over the place. And so I would be very careful about bringing that thing back, because it was interesting conversation, we'll put it that way. The second thing I would remind us of is that the mayor continues to talk about being a good neighbor, and he continues to talk about we all need to help enforce the codes, we all need to follow the codes. And so I guess I would say maybe people are listening to the mayor and calling more, but I am not getting those phone calls. And I actually know about that RV that you're talking about is a lot longer than the ordinance allows. And I didn't call it in, but I'd been watching it and wondering if somebody had. So you're getting part of the story, and that's the way those go all the time. But
once again,
that's probably some good advice, Councilor. myself, when I find myself being drawn into conflicts between neighbors, I know that it's a no-win situation for them or for me, and I choose to stay out of it because most of the time, as my role as a city councilor does not allow me by charter, there's not a lot I can do immediately to fix those problems. So, Councilor Staggers?
But once again, the broader issue is we have so many of these codes on the books. I mean, I can go down a street and I can find every house having code violation. And so if you have a neighbor that's just not very pleasant, they can,
make everybody's life miserable.
They can make everybody very miserable.
Yes, sir.
Just
and if you have suggestions for removing certain codes, you can sure bring them to the council. So, other input or discussion?
My name's Darren McDonald.
Hey, Darren.
My wife and I are blessed enough to own a small convenience store at 2200 East 10th Street. And I'm here tonight to tell you about my experience with the City of Sioux Falls ordinance on dumpster enclosures.
Okay.
I apologize for not having exact dates, but in the fall of 2012, I received a letter to put up an enclosure on my dumpsters in a certain amount of time. I contacted the code enforcement department and let them know I would be unable to put one up in that time frame. They were kind enough to take up the issue again in the spring. So in the spring, they let me know that I needed to put one up. I decided to get a couple of bids and decided I couldn't afford to pay someone to put one up. Instead, I started to put one up myself. It took longer than the city liked, so in the meantime, I received a $100 fine, then a $200 fine, then a $300 fine. I finished the dumpster enclosure sometimes towards the end of summer. Again, I apologize for not having exact dates on the fines or the completion date. What I would like to do tonight is show you, city council members, pictures of city-owned properties that fail to comply with the city's own ordinance. Literally, there are thousands of locations in the city in violation, not all city-owned, but privately, and and everything. Here's.
Okay.
The current way that this ordinance is enforced is a tattletale system. One business tattletales on another, and they are forced to comply with this ordinance. To finish my own personal story, once I completed my own dumpster enclosure, I didn't hear from the city for 6 months until they decided to take me to small claims court to collect $600 that I didn't pay. Now I have a judgment against me. I will be unable to pay this judgment when it is due because of some unforeseen expenses. It is great for the city's tax base to see shiny new stations like Casey's come and go. Excuse me, a little nervous. And Hy-Vee gas. Unfortunately, for independently owned mom and pop stores like my wife and I, it brings many challenges. I don't see how the city can legally fine a small business when it fails to follow its own ordinance. Thanks.
Darren, very good. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's continue with the pictures until we're done.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
And for the folks watching on TV, what we're showing are dumpsters in town that Darren has found that do not have enclosures around them. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Darren.
Yeah, lots of them. Yep. Parks Department. City Hall.
again, thank you very much for your commentary tonight. We appreciate it, and we will follow up on it.
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go. Come on, let's go. Come on.